With us today is State Representative Maureen Stapleton, and you know, as I know, the issue of public lighting within the city of Detroit has been an issue that has been ongoing and ongoing and ongoing. So here to share with us where we are today with some proposed solutions, please join me in welcoming State Representative Maureen Stapleton.
Thank you, Donnell, to Reverend Anthony, and the greatest branch of the NAACP that we have in this nation, and the allies that are here today. I don't know about you, but my street's dark. Mine too. And it has been dark for over a year. As late as a week ago, I almost hit somebody. Coming around a bend. They were walking across the street from my building, from some short condos. I live in Lafayette Park, and I didn't see them. It enraged me so much over the last year and a half that my office and I started this campaign. We were going to fax or email the mayor's office every day with a list of lights that were out in my community. And so the days that I came home, I drove my district. And I wrote list after list after list after list. Sometime around February of this year, the mayor's office called me and said, let's sit down and figure out what and how we can get this lighting bill addressed. They had talked to the governor, and they were willing to work on it. Just a FYI, he is a nerd. It is a revenge, and we got to be very careful about what we work with him on. But at the end of the day, I knew that my streets were dark, and I know that people were being hurt. 3.5 weeks ago, a young man died on Lafayette, shot and murdered, blocking half away from my house. And the response from the neighbors was, we saw something going down, but we couldn't see where they ran. And so this is much greater than just a sense of security. This is a public safety issue. People are dying, and criminals are getting away with things at night because people can't see them. And so I am going to take you through a 10-minute presentation, and I'm going to ask James to time me, because he always has a cell phone in his hand, because I want to take a few questions, and I want to make sure that I'm on the road, because I just found out, since I've been sitting here, that I need to testify in a Senate committee this afternoon, so I need to get there by 1. The presentation will be a quick backdrop from across the state, what and why this bill can happen, and and how it's put together. A background and history of Detroit lighting. We will talk about the facts, not the fiction, not the myths that some folks are perpetuating about this bill and lighting in our city. We will talk about the facts of the Municipal Lighting Authority bill, and that we hopefully will make into an act very quickly. We will talk about some companion legislation. Again, I will hand out to you, or you already have, a facts and myths sheet that we can review very quickly, and then I'll take a few questions and give you a few answers of things that you need clarification on. What do we know about lighting in the state of Michigan? We know that there are 41 communities in the state of Michigan that own their own poles and lights. What I call the above ground infrastructure. Poles and lights are owned by the city. Some of those cities still also own their power generating plants. We do not. Either way, what we do know is that most of these cities have infrastructure that is 50 years old or over. So half of these cities have poles and lights that literally are 50 years old. Stuff doesn't last forever, and so all of these cities are looking for ways to get an infusion of dollars into their systems to fix the lights and the poles. We just happen to be the largest of those cities. While most of these cities, unlike Detroit, has built that into their budgets, and it comes directly out of their general fund, we all know what's happening in our economy in terms of general fund dollars. Property values are still underwater, right? So cities are taking less money in, rainy day funds have dried up, and not just Detroit, all governments in this state have been affected with their ability to bond or get an infusion of cash, because nobody right now wants to give government a dime, because we're still in very tenuous times. And so we've got a number of cities around the state of Michigan that are suffering with the, what are going to be our solution to lighting our cities moving forward. For Detroit, clearly we are the largest city affected by lighting issues. 2 years ago, the city of Detroit entered into an agreement with DTE to close Mustersky Power Plant. The reason that was done was because over time, the kind of capital investment that was required for Mustersky did not occur. Over a 45-year period, we did not do anything to Mustersky except Band-Aid it and bubble gum and keep it together without making the capital investment necessary. Now, as a state representative and a former city employee, I can tell you I think it's the worst thing in the world to shut down Mustersky. We should have found a way to get that capital in, to do the capital investment, because that was the piece of the system that was revenue generating if it was operating correctly and being run correctly. Selling energy off to other people through a power plant, even though a majority of it just powered our streetlights, we had Tower 500 and 600 of the Renaissance Center when I worked for the city were on PLD. We had part of, as an example, Receiving Hospital was on PLD. There are industrial buildings throughout the city of Detroit that at some point in their history were a part of the PLD system. And the reason they left the PLD system, Public Lighting Department system, is because we couldn't manage it. And we did not put the capital investment, and there were too many failures and too many times that they were out, and so those entities kind of left us and went to the DTE process. Be that what it may, that's done. And but for probably $380 to $400 million, we will not be able to bring back up Mustersky. That, again, I believe was a mistake. So that finds us 2 years later and 45 years after we've actually put some serious investment into our poles and our lights, with literally any day 40 to 60% of our lights being out. So DTE and Mustersky is one part of the picture. Poles and lights are another part of the picture. And then the third piece of the issue is our traffic lights. And I'll get back to that in just a minute. In order to make our poles and lights around this city work again, we need an infusion of a minimum of $150, more like $160 million to get them working again. Why aren't they working? Well, in addition to us not putting our money into Mustersky and keeping that capital asset up and running and in good condition, we have three major reasons why our streets are dark. One, the one we all know about, copper theft. Copper theft is a huge issue for lighting. We know that the city tried to find a solution several years ago. It was a bad solution, putting plastic things around the bases of our light poles, and they broke those plastic things and kept on going and got the copper anyway. We also know that 30 to 40% of our city is still on what we call a Christmas tree string. If you remember the old Christmas tree lights, one would go out and they would all go out. And so that's why you'll see strings of darkness. Even when it was halfway properly working, one would go out and it would take the whole block with it. The third reason that our lights are out is some of them have mercury in them. The EPA said don't turn them back on. That happened almost 10 years ago. And so there are areas around the city, including in my neighborhood, Lafayette Park itself, that does not have the ability to turn on lights because there is mercury, high levels of mercury in them. Now, if you can imagine, when I was a kid, I did it a couple times. You broke a thermometer and you played with the silver balls. Remember that? Bad idea. Bad idea. And if you can just magnify that by a greater quantity, we can't turn some of our lights on just because we absolutely have mercury throughout 10 or 15% of the system. And so we need $160 million to repair them. Detroit's bond rating obviously is low, just like many cities, but probably lower than the average city in the state, and no ability with cash on hand to infuse $150 million into the lighting system. So go on, James. So we began the conversation. It was the mayor's office, somebody from the governor's office, me, the city lobbyist, and my staff. And we all talked about, and that's probably my phone, so excuse, try to find it, sorry about that. That's the campaign phone I didn't cut off. We also, we had a conversation, and someone came up with the first draft of this bill, and we continued to have conversations. And ultimately, I'm going to walk you through the 5 or 6 major components of this bill and why I think it's a good thing. But then I'm going to get down to the real of what concerns Detroiters, because it concerned me too as I began working with this body to come up with this bill. First, the bill allows 41 cities, if they so choose, to create a 5-person board. It is not a mandate from Lansing, as if we have seen in the last couple of months. It's not a you must do kind of bill. It is permissive. If cities agree, they can create a 5-person authority. All that we ask is that they be residents of the jurisdiction. Between you, me, and the wall, and the fence post, and whoever's filming this right now, I'm a little concerned with suburban folks continuing to be placed on boards, and governors putting appointees down here to manage Detroit. We can do this ourselves, with our own money, without a whole lot of interference, and so therefore I was very keen on a couple of things, and I'm going to walk you through what those things that I demanded after we get through this process. One member of the board must be an accountant, because there's a lot of money involved. One must be a lawyer, because there are some legal issues that are going to come up. And one must be an engineer, somebody who understands the insides of those poles and lights that are around our city. We need to have certain expertises at the table, and this is the way we ensured it. The appointment to the authority is not from the governor or Lansing or the legislature. The appointment to the authority is from our locally elected officials. Our mayor and council will decide who these 5 people are. Again, ensuring that Lansing's reach doesn't reach down on this as they have tried to overreach on a number of different things. This 5 group of people will be able to go out on the market as an authority and bond, and bring in the revenue that is necessary to fix our lights. Again, we need about $150 to $160 million in order to make a dent in this. There are 44,000 lights out in the city of Detroit. This money that we're bringing in is enough to fix the 44,000 lights that are out. It also is important to note that this bill preserves the ownership of the poles and the lights with the local municipality. So Detroit will continue to own the poles and the lights. It will be managed by a 5-person group of Detroiters. Ownership is important, and I knew it was before I went into the table, because I understand we're under attack and we're having everything in the world taken away from us. So that was an important piece that we worked on to ensure that the ownership would retain with the city of Detroit.